It's time for the Property Podcast, where every week tens of thousands of property investors, new and experienced, join together to get news, knowledge and laughs at our expense. With me, Rob Bence.
And me, Rob Dix. Join us every Thursday morning for your weekly dose of property ideas and motivation. Then head over to our website at thepropertypodcast.com to keep the conversation going. Now though, let's get started.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Property Podcast. It's episode 109. I'm Rob B. With me, as always, is Rob D. Hello Rob, how are you?
I am very well, thank you. I can't believe I've got to talk to you again, though. We've talked to each other so much this week.
You need to go abroad again.
Yeah. We had one of our rare meetups in person. We had the summit review, which we'll talk about in a second. We've had all our regular meetings as well. And now we've got to do a podcast together. But luckily, it's going to be a good one. It's going to be 10 things property investors should never be heard saying. And I think it's going to be quite a funny episode, but hopefully a useful one and a funny one.
It is. I'm looking forward to this one. It might be a bit snappier than normal, but it'll be fun. And actually, it'll be a good refresher of some of the things to be aware of, because we've done so many podcasts now. This episode is just some of the key points to be aware of, but in a fun way. So I'm looking forward to that. But first, Rob, we have to mention what we've been up to this week. And it is meeting each other and meeting people from the summit. So it's not just you and I who've been catching up a lot this week. We've also done our first summit review. So recap for anyone who's new, we do a summit every quarter. You can find out more about that at thepropertyhub.net/summit. So you can find out more details there. But essentially what it is, it's a mastermind we do quarterly with just a very small group of people. But it's not one of these rah-rah days where we just build you up and then send you off to the wild yonder and hope you get on okay. We do a follow-up 3 months later. So we were there a couple of hours this week, running through everything. I'm committed, Rob, because Liverpool were playing at the time. That's more my poor scheduling than commitment, if I'm being honest. But to be fair, we had a great evening. It was really good. It was really good to see how much people can do in 3 months. Like, I'm not being kind here for the sake of being kind. There was some seriously impressive behaviour over the last 3 months, like people doing 2-3 investments even in 3 months, like incredible stuff. So, and some really nice emails as well afterwards with lovely feedback. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. How did you find it?
Yeah, for me it was really, it sunk in how much you can get done in 3 months if you set your mind to it. Because under normal circumstances, 3 months can just drift by and you don't even notice it happening. You can have the best of intentions, but, you know, time just passes and things happen and you don't get anywhere. But that's really the power of this, not just the summit, but actually whatever mechanism you use to sit down, plan out what you're going to do and be held accountable by other people, whether that's a summit, whether it's just with a friend. It just shows how much you can do. And like you said, we've had people, I wish I'd kept track of how many properties have been bought in the last 3 months by this group of people. And not just that, but properties being bought, research being done, connections being made. It's really inspiring. What I enjoyed the most was that this was like the official 3-month check-in session, but practically everyone on the call had other sessions with other people who they'd met at the summit beforehand. So it wasn't just like, oh yeah, I remember you from 3 months ago. Everyone was saying, oh yeah, well, so-and-so and I were chatting about this the other day. And that's brilliant because that's exactly what we wanted it to be. So that was a really great session. And in a couple of months, we'll be doing it all again with our next group. And hopefully they will be following in their footsteps.
We certainly will. So if you're interested in finding more about the summit, if this is the first time you're hearing about it, go to thepropertyhub.net/summit. It's a really great event. We limit the numbers to only 16 people now. We keep it nice and tight and small, and it's an amazing day. But find out more there. Right, time for news story of the week. And Rob, my mum's really disappointed because I was in the paper, but it was a London one. So she didn't get to see it, and that's the only person who really would have cared. But I'll share it on the podcast instead.
Yeah, well, this story from City AM is about don't get burned by the buy-to-let boom. Talking about the pension reform and how you can invest in property. Notable for 2 reasons. It's mostly just the same kind of thing that we talked about back in episode 107, pension reforms and property, everything you need to know. But notable for having quotes from you in there, Mr. B. Also notable for coining a phrase I hadn't seen before. Pensioners who are going to be investing in property, grandlords.
Grandlords! I wish that was mine, but it wasn't.
I haven't heard that one before.
No, that's not me, ladies and gentlemen. I didn't come up with that one. That's very good. I like that, grandlords. I should have stolen that one.
Yeah, but in your quote, I'll blow your trumpet for you. You are featured in this article, and you're saying exactly what you said on the podcast, which is reassuring. You're not saying something completely different. We said wouldn't go near the southeast. Prices have risen massively, and recommending northern cities where the market is calmer. And also, quite rightly, recommending caution because there are going to be a lot of dodgy people out there targeting those retirement pots. And funnily enough, I think it was Tuesday that this came into force, or it was the first working day that it came into force. And in the morning, I got a spam call on my phone. I looked up the number that was calling, as I always do, and it was already listed online as and people saying how it was pension scammers. It's like, wow, on the first morning, I'm already getting calls about this. So you can only imagine what operations have been set up to try and cash in on this.
They'd obviously done their research, targeting a young 30-year-old.
Highly targeted.
Yeah. The market research went as far as a phone book. I hate it how they get the numbers, but anyway, let's move on before we get into a random rant. And our main topic this week is 10 things property investors should never be heard saying.
Yes, it is. And this is, like you said, Rob, a fun way of running through some of the kind of key principles of property investment and how to avoid some of the mistakes that we see again and again. So it's some things to get right. It's some things to absolutely avoid. Presented in a fun way, because you do hear things that make you cringe when you're speaking to investors. I get it. You must get it more than I do because you speak to a lot more investors than I do as a result of RMP. But you just hear certain things where it's like, oh, I just don't know. I don't know whether I should mention something or not. But you do hear things. So let's get into it, shall we? What's the first one?
Okay, number one, I don't want to spend money on a mortgage broker. That's madness. It really is. I've said it before, and I will say it again, and I'll probably say it again in the future, but Rob and I still use mortgage brokers. We use them, even though we know a lot about property and a lot about mortgage products, probably more than average. I hope so, more than average. But the point being is, that's not our specialist field, and we're not experts. There are lots of products out there, and you can go on those comparison tables and go, well, I don't need a broker because that one's top, and that must be the cheapest. Not necessarily. One, you could be going down a mortgage application that you'll never get lending for, but you don't know it. Two, there might be some hidden fees. So the top rate looks great, but there's fees in there, or you're locked in for a long time, or redemption penalties are high that you're not noticing. That particular lender might take forever to get things done, and a mortgage broker would know to avoid them. So there are so many reasons why to use a mortgage broker. They'll save you time and hopefully save you money as well. So don't see using mortgage brokers as a cost. See it as an investment. That's what it really is. But so many people are trying to pinch pennies here and there. You shouldn't be doing that. That's not the way to approach property investments. And Rob, that really links into point two.
So the second thing a property investor should never be heard saying, I can do that myself. So in your case, it was specifically to do with mortgage brokers, but then an obvious area is when it comes to repairs, but you could apply it to lots of other things in property as well. It's just not efficient to try and do everything yourself. And I think maintenance and management is a key example. Like, you could say that, oh yeah, well, you guys have got a letting agency. You would say that. But I think that when time is tight, you don't want to be doing everything yourself. Everyone who we spoke to at the summit catch-up is working full-time. Most of them are parents. They're all extremely busy. So it's all you can do, really, to do what has to be done to invest in property. If you're also trying to arrange your own mortgage, go and unblock your own sink and all the rest of it, it's just not an efficient use of time, and you're going to get so much further by employing specialists to go and do these things for you. With things like repairs, it's not an investment in the way that using a mortgage broker is. It is a cost, but then you've got to think of your time cost, and I think that's where people go wrong a lot of the time. They think, oh, well, if I go and make a 2-hour round trip and do this, I'll save 40 quid. But ultimately, you're shortchanging yourself.
You are. Next, number 3, I wish I'd learned less. Now, I know nobody's going to be saying that who's listening to the podcast, because the fact you're listening shows you care about educating yourself. But really, nobody's going to say that, I wish I'd learned less. Because the more knowledge you can consume, the more learning you can practice, you're just going to become a better investor. There's no doubt about it. Practicing, researching, just investing in your knowledge when it comes to property investment will pay tenfold. So you can never learn enough as well. Something that I say quite frequently is the biggest fool is the person who thinks they know it all. Or the person who thinks he knows it all is the biggest fool, however you want to put it. It really is the case. Rob and I, we really don't know everything when it comes to property. there are certain issues like that I'm learning on, lease options, not a specialist field for me. When we did the lease options episode, Rob put that one together and I learned from it. We know a lot, but we certainly don't know it all, and nobody knows it all. And if someone tells you that they do, run away. So keep learning as you are. I know podcast listeners, we're preaching to converted, but make sure you pass that message on.
Yeah, and speaking of ways of learning, here's one that I don't agree with. Number 4, something a property investor should never be heard saying, "Oh, well, I saved up £20,000 in the bank, so I've just spent it on a training course. Now I can really get started in property." Now, there will be people listening who are going to disagree with me about this. And there are people who've gone on a course, spent that kind of money, and they think that they've got great value for it and it's made a difference for them. I am not going to disagree. I'm not going to tell them that their own experience is wrong, but I would say that for the majority of people, I don't think it's necessary to spend that kind of money. And I think that sort of sum, £20,000, would be so much better spent actually investing in a property than it would be learning things where, for the most part, you can pick up that knowledge much more cheaply. So a book, a few pounds, 110 episodes of a podcast, free. The Property Hub forum and other forums, free. There's so much stuff out there that you don't have to pay this kind of money for. And there are a couple of arguments in favour of courses. Of course there are. Like, first of all, it saves you time because someone's done all the research for you and they're putting it to you in a structured way. And then there's also the accountability aspects. People will meet others on those courses who can support them. And also the fact that you've spent that kind of money means that you kind of feel like you have to follow through on it. So I do see the positives. But if you're just starting to think about getting started in property, this is one of the first pieces of research you've done. I'd very much encourage you to keep on along that line and put the decision about whether you're going to spend big money on training way down the line once you've experienced just how much you can do for yourself a lot cheaper.
Yeah, I've got to add to that because this is what I'm passionate about. That 20 grand, you could invest it in a property instead, and you'll learn a lot more, I promise you, because the actual doing, the amount of knowledge you'll absorb will be incredible. It's very unlikely it's going to be a complete disaster. You're not going to lose that whole 20 grand, or very unlikely to, by investing. If you're reasonably sensible, then you should be okay. And the second thing is a book we've talked about many times on the podcast. Sounds cheesy, but it's really good. Millionaire Fastlane by MJ DeMarco. Really good book. But one of the things he says in the book, amongst many others, is training is great, but if you're paying more than £1,000 for training, then you're probably getting scammed, and the person who's benefiting then swings over to the people who are doing the training rather than the people attending. It's quite a crude number. Okay, well, I'm going to pick 1,000, but I think he's there or thereabouts. Under £1,000 for some training sounds about fair value, but when you're talking thousands upon thousands, the value level, I think, quickly drops off. Okay, next, I've just checked my bank statements and I haven't received any rent for the last 6 months. I hope no one says that, because 5 minutes a month can avoid that happening. It's just a simple system to set up. Put it in your calendar as a reminder, put it in your phone, however you want to do it. And one of the few things you should be doing as a property investor, because most of it you can outsource, but one of the few things you should be doing and not relying on someone else is just a quick financial check every month. Is the rent in? Tick, 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 however many properties you've got. Is it the amount I was looking for? Yes, 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 yes. Done. That's it. That's it. That's one of the few things you should be doing. If you're outsourcing, most of the rest can be done. So there should never be a time when you've just realised you haven't been paid for 6 months. Now, you can't say, well, I've got a letting agent, because trust me, letting agents get it wrong. I've done it multiple times over the years where I've gone, where's my rent? So you can't rely on the letting agents. This is something that you have to do. Check 5 minutes a month, and that should never, ever happen. But I know it has happened. I'm speaking from experience where people have come up to me and went, oh, I went this many amounts a month without receiving my rent. 5 minutes a month will stop that happening. So make sure you take that 5 minutes.
Yeah, do you hear these stories about people who ended up thousands and thousands in arrears? It's like, how did that happen? That should never have been allowed to start. And once it does start, the longer something goes on for, the less likely you are to actually recover that money. So definitely get on it straight away. Okay. Number 6, another thing a property investor should never be heard saying, that repair can wait another couple of months. Okay, so many reasons why you should get on things like repairs straight away. First of all, the longer it waits, the more serious it's going to get, the more it's going to cost you ultimately. Secondly, the longer you wait, the more annoyed your tenant is going to be, and they're less likely to stay. And thirdly, there's actually an amendment to the law, which I've just been writing about for the Property Hub magazine, that means that if a tenant has reported a repair, they don't get a response and they end up taking it to the local authority, they can actually prevent you from ending a tenancy using a Section 21 notice for 6 months. So it's basically giving tenants some protection. So they can report things without being worried that the landlord's going to do a so-called revenge eviction. But really, things should never ever get to that stage. If a repair is needed, get onto it straight away. Even if you feel like, but I've just spent money on this, it doesn't matter. Just get on it. And, ideally, get someone else to get on it. It's not hard, but if it's not your own time, then don't be put off by spending the money either, because it's always going to be cheaper to sort something out now than it is later.
It is. Okay, another one, you should never be saying, I'll pay the asking price, please. Property is not a fixed sum game. So what I mean by that is you don't see a price and go in and have to stick to it. So it's not like going to Tesco's and looking at the milk and then trying to negotiate on the milk price. It's not going to happen. But in property, you can. So if you can do that, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you negotiate? Why wouldn't you try and get the best price? This is about investment, remember. If you're talking about your dream home, then sometimes people can pay over the odds. But investment, it should be colder. It shouldn't be as emotional. It shouldn't be, I really want that. It's about finding the best investments. And if you're looking for the best investments, you really should be trying to buy below market value. Something we've talked about a lot on the podcast. Now, what level of below market value you achieve, that's up to you. But you really should be pushing as hard as you can to get the best deal. And also have the confidence to walk away from an investment. At RMP Property, I am at the moment, I'm seeing more deals than I've ever seen before, but I'm turning them down left, right and centre. And there was a point earlier this year where we went 7 weeks without an investment. Not because I wasn't seeing any. I was seeing, at least one a day. So I was seeing 7 a week minimum, but it was often, double digits. But I was just walking away until I found the right deal, and then I pounced. And that's what you should be doing. Don't get emotional, don't get nervous, hold your nerve, and be prepared to negotiate hard, and the right deals will come.
Yeah, there are some really good threads on the Property Hub recently, actually. There's a few around this topic, around people saying how they're really frustrated because they've just lost out on investment because it went over the asking price. People talking about negotiating with estate agents, and how I think a lot of people naturally feel bad about going in low and worry about offending people. But those threads are really worth checking out. There's lots of good information on there, in addition to what Rob just said. But yeah, don't just go in and pay the asking price. Okay, number 8. Property investors should never be heard saying, I don't want to get into debt. Because this is something that we covered back on episode 18, all the way back in, July 2013 that episode was. Leverage Explained was the name of the episode. Still one of our most popular. And it was a light bulb moment for a lot of people, I think, because there is this association that you get that debt equals bad. But of course, as you know, if you've read Rich Dad Poor Dad, if you listened to episode 18, or to be fair, most other episodes of the Property Podcast as well, debt doesn't have to be bad. There's good debt and there's bad debt. And if you're taking on a sensible level of leverage, that is good debt, because it means that you'll get a far better return than you otherwise would. Of course, it cuts both ways. Of course, you've got to be careful. But I think this is, one of the things where new investors often come into it going, I really want to invest in property. I love the idea. I get it. I know prices go up. I know that I can make a good return, but I just don't want to get into debt. So I'm going to save up until I can buy one property in cash. And it's like, you're so close to seeing the whole picture, but it'd just be so much better. You'd get such a better return if you can just overcome that debt aversion. So episode number 18, Leverage Explained, is the one to listen to if you feel like you don't quite understand the concept or you need a bit more help getting over it. But I think property investors should happily be getting into the right kind of debt, because that's one of the best things about property investment. It certainly is. So make sure you check that episode out. Number 9, he seems so nice, I didn't want to waste my time checking his references. Please don't do this. This one sounds like an obvious one, but it does happen. People who do self-management in particular, they'll go around, meet their tenants, make a gut decision on them, and then hope it works out for the best. That is not a good way of doing business, and property investment is a business. So if you're using a letting agent, then this shouldn't even be part of the conversation. They will do thorough reference checks.
Well, at least it should do. But this really, as I said, is for people who do self-management. If you do decide to go down the self-management route, if that's what you want to do, never, ever proceed without reference checking. You can get reference checks done for a modest sum. Please don't ever see that as an expense. It is an investment. It could save you hundreds, if not thousands, in the future. I don't need to really say too much more on that one, because really, if you're silly enough to break this rule, you can't complain if it does go wrong.
Okay, so final thing, a property investor should never be heard saying, I'll start investing when things calm down. That will never happen. You need to make time to start now if that's what you want to do. And this really ties back into what we were saying about the summit. Everyone who came to that and everyone who had a catch up with this week is super, super busy, but they've all made things happen anyway. And that is really the key. There are so many people who will defer their investment dreams. And again, on the Property Hub, there are threads from people saying, I've really been into the idea of property for over 10 years, and now I'm going to get started. And it's brilliant that they're getting started. But of course, it would have been so much better if they got started 10 years ago. Imagine how much cheaper they could have picked up properties for if they'd started at the time and made time to make it happen. Because, you're not just going to fall into it. It's not just going to fall into your lap. You have to go out there and make it happen. And so making it a priority, as the people at the summit did, going out and doing it anyway, making the time is so important.
Yeah, you're right. And what you'll do is you'll start telling yourself stories. Oh, well, I couldn't because of... And whatever precedes that is just an excuse, but you turn it into a story, and that's why you don't do it. Life is great at getting in the way. Take action. Just do it. I think Nike said that, but we'll steal it. Just do it. And I'll tell you what, Rob, let's do a bonus one. That's 10. But number 11, this one should certainly never, ever be heard saying, I don't want to subscribe to the Property Hub new magazine.
Very good. Indeed. The Property
See
Hub.
what I did there? Cheeky plug.
Always over-delivering. Tip number 11, we should give you 10. But yeah, the propertyhub.net/magazine, there's still just about time to get issue 1. And you definitely should. I've been editing some of it this week, and it is brilliant. That's all I'm going to say.
Which is quite good for us, Rob, because normally we would rabbit on for ages. But talking about rabbiting on, that's our resource of the week.
Oh dear. It's getting worse. Yes, resource of the week, TaskRabbit. So this is something that started in America. It's now available in the UK. And essentially, it's like we've talked about things like Elance and Odesk before. So this is where you can outsource tasks to people all over the world. Well, TaskRabbit is where you can outsource like real world tasks to people who live near you. So whatever it is that you need doing, whether it's a repair, whether it's someone to go and collect your dry cleaning for you, whatever it is, you can get someone local to go and do it for you. So it's a different type of outsourcing. Now, we've both used this, Rob, but I don't know what you've used it for.
I have to thank you for this, Rob, because you originally mentioned it to me, and then we had some bits and pieces that needed to be done in the office. And then Dale remembered the episode, Dale, who works with me at RMP, Dale remembered the episode where you mentioned TaskRabbit and said, what about TaskRabbit? So it's just those little niggly jobs that had been running on. So it was putting up a flat screen TV. We needed a couple of blinds sorting out in the office, and now summer's coming along, so we needed that to be sorted. A couple of paintings, pictures hanging up. It was just bits and pieces, and I'm useless with that. If I put it up, the blinds would be falling down, the picture would be slanted, and yeah, it wouldn't happen. And no one in the office, unfortunately, is that handy. So we jumped on TaskRabbit. When you join, they'll send you a code for your first one as well, so you get some money off. Jumped on TaskRabbit. It was great. Somebody came around, super friendly, super efficient, got it all done in next to no time, very reasonable price, and I'm very happy. Definitely use it again. I believe it's in London only at the moment, but they're rolling out in other cities very soon, and one of the next ones is meant to be Manchester.
Yeah, that's right. And the great thing about it is that it's like if you've used anything like Airbnb or Uber or anything like that, the great thing is that it's all review based. And so you could see what's been said about people. You can leave a review. So you can be really confident that whoever comes around is actually going to show up, is going to be friendly and do what they're meant to do. So I really like this whole trend towards reviews and transparency and everything else. It's just so much quicker, and you're so much likely to get a better result compared to just picking someone out of a phone book. in that case. But also, there are so many tasks that you wouldn't normally be able to hire someone to go and pick something up for you and bring it back. But you can do that with TaskRabbit because you can get them to do absolutely anything. So taskrabbit.co.uk is the place to go for that one.
Right, time for our review of the week. But this week's a little bit different because someone's left us a SpeakPipe recording. You can leave a recording on our website. If you go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast, you can see down the side, leave a recording. And Edward has kindly left us a recording, so a recording review. So let's play it.
Woo! Congratulations, Rob and Rob. Your property podcast really hit the spot. I got into property just before I turned 24, and I've been loving every single second of it. What I've been loving equally as much is your property podcast each week. It introduces new ideas to me each week without fail. And what's even better is it introduces these ideas in an easily editable form. I've also been getting into the Property Geek recently, which dives even deeper into certain topics, which I think is really great. The two combined are a great resource. Thanks a lot for the work, guys. Keep it up.
Whoa! Loving that, Edward. Thank you very much. And a hat tip to Property Geek as well. And Rob, I am loving the new format of Property Geek. I think it's excellent. If you're listening to this and you haven't listened to the Property Geek podcast yet, you're mad because it's really, really good.
Oh, well, thank you very much indeed. And thank you to Edward as well for that enthusiasm and the kind words. Love that. Do please leave us a review of your own, either on iTunes or even better is if we can play your voice out on the show. So all you need to do is go to thepropertyhub.net/podcast and you'll see on the right hand side a little button you can click, record your message into your computer. We'll play it out on the show. It really couldn't be any easier, and it's a lot of fun, especially if you've got the enthusiasm that Edward does.
Okay, so next week we gave you 10 things today. We're shortchanging you next week. Next week, the 5 questions we get asked the most answered. So we get asked a lot of questions, a lot, all the time. But there are certain questions that come up far more frequently than others. So this is that episode. This is probably you are thinking of some of these questions right now. So we're going to give you those 5 questions next week. But more importantly, we're going to give you the answers that we give probably on a, if not weekly, certainly daily basis to people who ask us stuff. So make sure you tune in for that one, because if you've got a few questions in your mind, you're probably thinking of at least one of these.
But Rob, I'm warning you, no sneaky bonus tip number 6. The question, how do I subscribe to the Property Hub magazine? We can't do that again. We've done it this week.
I'll answer it now, Rob. Go to thepropertyhub.net/magazine. Yay!
There you go. Okay. So that's coming up next week, plus all the news, the resources that you've come to expect. Really looking forward to that one, as we do every week. But for this week, thank you so much for joining us. Do go and subscribe to the magazine if you're interested and you haven't already. Otherwise, we will see you back here next Thursday morning. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to The Property Podcast. Make sure you join our mailing list at thepropertypodcast.com.
And remember, we love 5-star reviews. Rob even loves them more than air miles.